Hello everyone. So today's video topic is basically the steps for the aerobic respiration. Before starting this topic, we need to understand about that during the respiration process, the glucose molecules is basically broken down to produce some amount of energy, and they are basically classified into two types. The first one was the aerobic and the second was the anaerobic. In aerobic, oxygen is utilized, and in anaerobic respiration there is no need of oxygen. So glucose is the simplest molecules, and that enters a series of reaction that is called by the glycolysis, and another term that is the Krebs cycle. So these both are the basically the process, or we can say a reaction in which the aerobic reaction occurs. So starting with the topic steps for the aerobic respiration. So first step says that the first step is basically the glycolysis. It is the process that occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell, and it does not requires any oxygen. So basically the oxygen is not required in this process. Here the 6 carbon molecules of glucose is partially broken down into 3 carbon molecules that is termed by the name pyruvate or pyruvic acid. Here the glucose molecules are broken down with the help of the glycolysis process into the 2 pyruvate, or we can also term as the another name that is the pyruvic acid. So in this step, one glucose molecules produce 2 pyruvate or pyruvic acid. In the next step, we will see that these 2 pyruvate or pyruvic acid molecules are then converted into the acetyl CoA. This acetyl CoA is basically the lipid or a protein that converted into the fatty acid and then at last converted into the acetyl CoA. So we can also name is as a protein that enters into the mitochondria for the further reaction, and which inside occurs the reaction. Now in the third step we will understand that how these acetyl CoA molecules enter the mitochondrial matrix and then take parts in the Krebs cycle, that is the another process occurs during the steps for the aerobic respiration. Now from here at the last step, that is the step 4, in all these 3 steps the some amount of energy is also released. So this energy is released in all the above steps and is converted into ATP. So with the help of ATP synthase enzyme, the energy is converted to ATP, that is the adenosine triphosphate. And later on we all know that in aerobic respiration a total amount of 38 ATP energy is released or produced from one molecule of glucose. Now another topic, that is the steps for the anaerobic respiration. For this there is only the 2 steps that is required for the anaerobic respiration. The first step is similar as the aerobic respirations, that is the glycolysis process will start same as in the aerobic respiration. Here the glucose is broken down into 2 pyruvic acid with the help of glycolysis. Now in the second step we will see that this pyruvic acid that is produced in the process of glycolysis, so this pyruvic acid is not transported to the mitochondria, as we have seen in the aerobic respiration that this pyruvic acid is transferred or transported to the mitochondria for the further reactions. But in the anaerobic respiration steps, this pyruvic acid will not transport to the mitochondria, and this process will basically remains in the cytoplasm, and it is basically broken down into the waste product. So this waste product is basically the end product of this anaerobic respiration. Now if you see here, this is the ethanol and this is the carbon dioxide. So these are basically the end product for the anaerobic respiration. Now this entire process also occurs in the absence of oxygen, as we have seen in the differentiation between the anaerobic or aerobic respiration, that in the anaerobic respiration there is no need of oxygen for the reactions, but in aerobic respiration there is need for oxygen to do further reactions. Now anaerobic respiration occurs in which place, or basically where does it occurs? So these occurs in the root of some species, that is the root of the waterlogged plant, or some parasitic worms, yeast, that is the microorganisms, animal muscles, and some microorganism that are basically single celled organism. Now in some microorganisms, such as in, if you see the example of yeast, anaerobic respiration is called basically fermentation. In this process of fermentation, ethanol, that is the end product, is formed as by the byproduct. So this is already explained in the above reaction, that in the yeast, that is the microorganism, in the yeast basically anaerobic respiration occur, that is called by the term fermentation, and in during the fermentation ethanol is produced as the byproduct or end product of this reaction. So this was about the steps for the aerobic and the anaerobic respiration. In the next video we will understand about the illustration of anaerobic respiration. Till then, thanks for watching.